Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Covenant Cast. I'm Zach.
And I'm Steven.
And I'm Robert.
And today, we're revisiting Arkham. All right, what have you guys been up to this week? I'll let whoever wants to start.
Can you start?
Me? No,
Yeah.
I was totally greased for second.
What have I been up to? I went to a Halloween party this weekend, of course.
You did, and looks fantastic.
Yeah,
Dressed up.
that face makeup was on point.
Yeah.
It's like the Day of the Dead stuff.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Did that and wore a suit. Went to a party at the Brady. It's actually cool. So this is something worth considering if you're going to throw an event. I've seen this now happen a few times, and every time I go to an event that is done like this, Comic-Con's a great example, it seems like the people who are there are the people you want to be there.
Okay.
And so essentially the system is, the first year, it was some guy inviting all of his friends.
So Brady is this old theater.
Yeah.
That's got great acoustics.
Yeah, it's a big, fancy...
So he rents out a theater, has a party.
Venue. Rents out a theater, has a party. And I think that was back probably... I don't know anything about this, so I'm speaking completely hoping that it's correct.
All right.
But
Right out of the tuchus.
I know it started as somebody's birthday party, and I presume it was back when the Brady district and whatnot was not exactly as popping as it is now. When it was, probably easy. You rent the Brady with like a 6-inch sub and a Coke.
Yeah.
And so then the next year, anybody who showed up to that party got an invite and could bring one guest. But if you didn't show up, then you were not invited again.
Evermore?
Evermore.
You're now
unless
off
you're
the
someone's
list.
guest.
Unless
Okay.
you then make it back in as somebody's guest. And
So
then
are you now on the list?
I'm on the list.
What?
So anybody who comes through the door, you give them your name, email address, mailing address.
That's slick.
That's all
Isn't
the
that cool?
invites that
Yeah.
they send out next year in the mail. They mail you the invites. You can bring one guest. And
Nice.
then
'Cause
everybody
then-
comes, and then you send out the invites next year. And
Can I call dibs on one?
You can't call dibs.
I'm
There's gotta be
asking
gladiatorial
if
games.
I can.
You cannot.
You can't just say you can't call dibs.
I'll give you dibs on one.
Woo!
Yeah.
Jackpot, thanks.
If you're willing to wear some kind of an outlandish costume.
100%. There will be
I thought you were just
there will
previously-
be a hat or a fake tail.
You know who you could
that will
be
dazzle.
great? I can't think of the brand or the name, but it is the peanut with the monocle.
Oh,
Yeah.
Mr. Peanut.
Mr. Peanut?
Yeah.
You should just be Mr.
God.
Peanut.
I can't remember
No.
the brand or the name of the peanut with the monocle.
He's related to the Monopoly guy. On account of the
If you went with
monocle.
someone who's also, like you go as Mr. Peanut, someone goes as Monopoly guy, that would be great.
Oh yeah, you just have the whole troupe of monocle wearing
So wait.
characters.
Oh, monocled things.
Was the Day of the Dead not the theme?
No.
That was just what you guys
Just something
did.
That was
do.
just what we did because
Yeah.
what I don't want to do at Halloween, and this goes back to the what is that book that I was really into, the minimalist
Start
book?
with why.
Letting things go, or the magical
guy.
power of doing away with things.
It's
Tidying
right over
up,
here.
the tidying up book, yeah, that one. I
very
didn't want
zen.
to. I just the
Literally.
thing I despise is buying like
Stuff.
stuff.
Accruing junk.
And then it's like, okay, I had a costume with like a big, a tail and a furry, head dress or whatever. And then
Yeah.
it's like, okay, well now what?
Couldn't agree more.
You,
Yeah.
you donate it, you let it sit in your closet, and you don't go as the same thing next year.
Hopefully you're the same size as your dog, so the dog can wear it.
So you basically wore nice clothes and then painted your face.
That's it. You just wore a nice suit and then did the face paint. That's very it's very
See,
recognizable.
I had it in my head at the Brady.
Face painting. See?
It's
This party
important.
had face painting.
Let's have face painting. I had in my head that everyone at the Brady was Day of the Dead.
No.
Which would be cool.
That would be cool. Everybody was there. I saw somebody dressed as a shower, which was hilarious. They literally were fully encased in a curtain. And it was like coming up the back, and then there was a big circle, and there's a shower curtain around them. And
Nice.
so they were walking through the crowd completely...
Just a shower.
Couldn't see anybody.
Couldn't see anything.
And they had perfect space the
Yeah.
whole time. They were just walking around.
You're in my space. I'm taking a shower here.
But
Do you mind? Do you mind showering?
The pinnacle of that event was at 12:30. They didn't announce it or anything. There was a special room off the back alley of the Brady. And there was like members of the Tulsa Symphony and I think some local bands that have been around for a long time got together and were jamming a Beatles set, like a 2 to 3 hour just Beatles set. And it was, so they had horns, they had
None
some
of the
strings.
George Harrison songs, right?
They had singing, they had keyboards. Yeah,
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
and that was incredible. And so by that point, there was a lot of, we were dancing and it was just really nice. And everybody there, like the crowd was generally like 90% 50 plus, like 50 years old, and
That's
which
the
is
kind
the
of party you
crowd.
wanna
So
go
that's
to.
what I'm looking for.
Was it like how did liquor work here? Was it an open bar, cash bar?
They had discounted drinks, and it was as underwhelming as you could expect for serving hundreds and hundreds of people. So they had like $3 like bad beer, and then they were literally selling $3 strawberry margaritas. That was literally the strawberry Ritas out of the can that they just pour. They pour that little can into a glass.
Would you like this over ice or just in a cup?
But I found there was one place that had multiple stations. There was one place that had mixed drinks, and so it was your standard liquor plus cola or soda or whatever.
Sure.
So, we didn't really hit it too hard. It was just a kind of a nice wholesome
Moscow Mule.
It was great. We hit it a little hard before we left because you don't want to pay money.
Did you go to Whataburger before or after?
Neither.
Oh, man.
We dominated that. I brought the Indian brown beef stew, the leftovers that I had, and we got home and that was destroyed.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Everybody was just like, yeah, sweet stew. So that was cool, yeah. And then we're going to Worlds, so like I'm extremely ready for that. We're leaving tomorrow and
Dark 30.
God, I really want to see if we can interview Andrew about all the changes that have been going on. I want to talk about the digital stuff too that's been happening, and just what we're going to talk about here. Arkham's one of them. The LCGs are moving, and I do think that this directly stems from him having the authority now to move those kinds of changes along, and so it's
we'll find out, won't we?
Yeah, I really do think that's it though. I think Andrew is ready to disrupt whatever seems to be not working, and it's so nice to actually see that these days. So we got to get him on camera and see if that's
the
really
status quo has been bucked.
Back to that in a second. On to Robert's week.
I'm second. Oh, great.
You said you were greased up.
Yeah, I am totally greased up. But speaking of booze, and kind of dovetailing with what I mentioned last week, the mulled wine turned out. It was pretty good.
You have a new recipe now, yeah?
Yeah. Well, so I have problems with accepting the products of my own hand and finding them worthy and of value. And so it was good, the first batch, but it was like, there's some things to work out.
Yeah.
So permutated the recipe over the weekend, and it turned out much better, but still, there's room for improvement. So we'll be chasing that all season until I think and feel and taste its perfection.
Once you feel you've perfected it, we can either do a segment or a show.
Yes.
Robert's perfected.
Up to including knowing just how much brandy to put in there, because it's
important.
It does
Every ounce
matter.
matters.
Yeah.
Every
You want it
ounce
to
really
taste
matters.
good, but I mean, I'm a semi-utilitarian drinker. I would like some
punch?
alcoholic impact, please.
Semi-utilitarian. What is a semi-utilitarian?
I love it. No, that's probably the way that everybody should live, honestly.
Lord Almighty. All right. Well, I went to a Halloween party as Garth of Wayne and Garth.
This is a long-standing Halloween party at this point. There's a lot of members of the store and
Who
just
played
general
Garth?
folks that go.
Wait, no, IRL. Like, who
I
was
forget
Garth?
the guy's name. I don't know.
Oh, it was Dana Carvey. Sorry. Okay.
Well
Dana
done.
Carvey.
That's right.
Nice.
Anyways, my friend Matt has an annual Halloween party that he decks out his house.
The Matt Phillips.
You said Matt, and I was like,
Matt.
who?
He's been on some games on the channel back in the day of Thrones and
He
whatnot.
actually was even on we used to do a weekly tournament update.
That's right.
And he was one of our guests
Yeah,
because
that's right.
he won a league. Yeah. So if you were really curious about Matt Phillips,
Old Potato
you
Chip
can find
himself.
Potato Chip 99. Man, that's a long story that we're not going to go into. But he every year kind of raises the bar on this Halloween party. This year, he actually bought a fog machine.
Oh, yes. We were just talking about fog machines.
So prior to, like a couple hours before the party, I was there, and fog starts steaming out. And I walk out, and I'm like, what is happening? Is there something on fire? He's like, I got a fog machine. And he put it in the fireplace, so it looks like the smoke's coming from the fireplace. But the funny part to me, this is the best part of the whole thing, is that at 2 in the morning after everyone left and we're cleaning up, he is like, oh, I forgot to turn on the fog machine. So he didn't actually use it during the party.
Oh.
Not once. So we'll have to save it for some other
What a
festivity.
bummer. That would be devastating.
Well, you could have
to
a
me.
Nightmare Before Christmas and turn it on there or
Christmas
something.
thing. Yeah, and he's all this like above the doorway that you walk into when you like outside is like hanging skeletons and bones and
Nice,
stuff.
good,
And
well done.
And jumping spots. It's kind of crazy.
Well done,
Yeah,
Matt.
decorations are fun,
Stuff
aren't
matters.
they? Yeah.
Yeah, he really goes for it. So speaking of spooky things, let's talk about Arkham. It's technically Halloween. We're recording on Halloween.
Technically.
That's right. It is legitimately
If
Halloween.
you're listening to this, you're not listening to
Recorded
Halloween
on the 31st.
unless something happens.
We're going to have to start saying
And it's been about a year since the game came out. Mm-hmm. And I know both you play pretty regularly. I think you have like a monthly
got a monthly meetup
session. And so it felt like a pretty good time, both with Halloween happening, year of the game, to kind of and even the Carcosa cycle, which is the second cycle of the game, getting underway. We got the first pack, I think, a week ago.
That's right.
So it felt like a pretty good time to talk about the game, especially in light of everything that's been happening with LCGs. Because we talk about all the shakeups with Netrunner and all the shakeups with Destiny and all the what was the other one?
L5R.
L5R. Yeah, 6 pack, 6 weeks. I was like, there's a big one in the room that I am missing. You can't start naming things. Rule number 1.
Lists are dangerous.
Have you guys had a chance to break into Carcosa at all?
No. I mean, I've looked at it.
We played that first one.
Oh, that first one. Yes, I forgot about that.
I had a little seed of
Rather
information here.
suppressed that first one.
Yeah.
It was painful.
We have a weekend planned. Is that next weekend? Weekend after?
Yes.
It's one of those. And we're doing a full all Saturday run us
blitz
all the way through. Because what are we on right now? Do you know?
I think the next up is no, we did Blood on the Altar, so it's like Undimension Unseen. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is the next one, but we need to, and the intent is to finish the first cycle, just get it done, so we can try to be somewhat current with Carcosa.
Probably we might even get into some Carcosa depending on how I
need to build a deck then.
How the mulled wine flows, as it were.
Yes.
But yeah, we've been playing with a friend of ours, Philip Burkholder, who is actually also featured on our channel a long time ago.
For some Netrunner, maybe some Lord of the Rings, I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. But
things used to be wild.
So the most important point here, I think, about Arkham is that people are sleeping on this game to their own detriment. This is a cooperative game that has, I think, relatively flown under the radar. This mythos has always flown under the radar to me. And it may be the best LCG. I'd be willing to put money down saying that, like, just in terms of the experience that you're getting, the cooperative element, the release schedule making sense.
There may be Netrunner players listening right now.
Yeah, so. No. Yeah, that's fine. But I mean, Netrunner is obviously my favorite, but looking at it holistically, I think it satisfies everything I could ever want from the living card game format. And I think the mechanics are so slick. I think Matt has done an incredible job with all the development, making things make sense.
Yeah, I agree.
So
and those clicks.
You just gotta you have to truly appreciate that this game is really all that it's cracked up to be, legitimately.
Well, so for me, I played the game a couple times really early on, and was immediately from that very first game struck by the quality of this game. It's a theme I've never really been into. Historically speaking, I play competitive games, and so it's a cooperative and a theme that I'm not usually super into, and yet I was so impressed with this game. So in your opinions and in your words, what do you think it is about Arkham that makes that the case, right? Because I think there's a lot of elements that go into it, and there's probably a lot of people listening that don't play Arkham, that haven't picked up Arkham, that may not be into the theme, that may not be into cooperative games. And I think you're right in saying that there are a lot of people that I think would thoroughly enjoy this game that haven't even considered it because of those elements.
Yeah. What do you think, Robert?
For sure.
Especially because you play Lord of the Rings, so cooperative is not a new feature.
Sure.
But why Arkham?
But I think it's a confluence of a lot of things. The cooperative element is certainly one of them in my mind, in terms of it shaping your attitude and experience very much in real time and after the fact, because what is happening isn't so much about somebody winning or losing, but it's the team effort. There's no I in that team, kind of a lame analogy. And as a result, you have a completely unified experience. Did you win the scenario? Well, then we all did. Did you lose the scenario? Well, then we all did. And those losses can be devastating, but win or lose, you're sharing it. It gives you yet more to have in common and to commiserate over, that kind of a thing, and to work together to either maintain if you're winning or to improve upon if you're losing your scenarios. That way, hopefully you get better. But it's also drawing on some very astutely borrowed mechanics from other assets, namely those clicks from Netrunner. Your investigators have so many actions per turn that they can perform. There's these basic ones, and then there's specific ones relative to what's happening in the game. And that to me is immense, in that it sets a level playing field for all the players in terms of their rough general overall capacities of what they can do in a turn, but then also it allows them to have complete freedom within that relative loose constraint. And to me, that's just everything you want. You have to somehow conform to the rules that you're playing with, but at the same time, it's completely your choice onto how to proceed. Do you want to get that card? Do you want to get a resource? Do you want to investigate, move, etc.? And much like with Netrunner, where you must look at the board and assess what's going on, you have to do the exact same thing on Arkham, because if you do things out of order or inefficiently or you forget something, that is, just like with Netrunner, a great way to really just paint yourself into a corner and probably not win.
And
it's a challenging game.
There's something about just in terms of the game, the mystery of it, the exploration aspect is so intensely satisfying to actually find out what's happening next and having truly no idea what kind of challenge it's going to throw. So we often talked about, in comparison with Lord of the Rings, a lot of times you anticipate that there will be locations that are going to raise the threat, there will be monsters that are going to raise the threat or attack you. And past that, there's not a lot that it can do to just kind of put a complete confusion in your plans. But with Arkham, it's like you might explore a new location that sends you to an entirely new part of the map, and that's part of the challenge, is that you have to pay attention to the position of things as much as what everything is actually doing rules-wise. So it's a cooperative game that has an actual movement and exploration element, and you just literally feel like you are exploring these locations, and that any amount of horrors, it's going to go wrong. That's the thing about the Cthulhian mythos. It's always lurking. So there's never a moment where it's like, a reprieve, like this is totally fine and nice. There's always some ulterior motive that is essentially evil. And I'd never been into that idea or that mythos before, but I'm as interested in Arkham Horror, like the board game and those kinds of things, as I am in the card game. Like I am truly, I think Carcosa, I think the mythos of Carcosa between True Detective and getting it now in Arkham Horror, I had no idea this stuff existed.
Sure.
And now here I am, like, so fascinated by Chambers and like, what was this? What does it mean that people are writing this kind of weird fiction, and how much truth is there to it? Like, is it purely just kind of like whimsical, or is there seriously deep-seated, like, psychological things going on in these writings? It's all just really cool. So I didn't think I'd enjoy it. And the exploration, the actions like you're talking about, there's a game player challenge, there's an imagination thing going on, there's a board exploration thing going on. I think it really does have all of the effects that you're looking for a really holistically appreciated experience for a cooperative game.
And I was even recalling just now how much I enjoy kind of what I had ended up doing routinely with Lord of the Rings, but also in Arkham, if you want, you can kind of bring in some of that role-playing game kind of experience where, of course, you do have an identity for your investigators that's essentially pre-scripted for you, but that the role of each investigator is also there for you. So are you that roguish type? Are you that fighter type? Are you the spellcaster type? And you can gravitate or not, however you please. So you get your band back together, as it were, and you're going out and you're filling those niches and creating that balanced party. And to me, that's another big underscore in that teamwork factor.
Yeah, I think a handful of things to hit on there. You mentioned True Detective. And so when I used to think of Arkham Horror or Cthulhu, I would think of like Cthulhu Wars kind of thing, where it's like board full of monsters, all these crazy gods, and this crazy thing happening. But I think now, in retrospect, like looking at Arkham, it does feel so much more like True Detective or Stranger Things. These kind of like, there is this kind of weird thing happening.
Just that background horror, I really love it.
And it's the background horror, not the like in-your-face jump scare, crazy horror, which is really the theme of Arkham Horror.
Yeah.
Like it's not as wild as like Cthulhu, but at the same time, it does have those elements of mysticism and like, what's the evil lurking beneath kind of situation.
So here's the question, Zach. Why have you not gotten hooked yet?
Into Arkham?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good question. I think the reality is like Arkham is dependent on having a crew, a group that you play with.
Saying
like,
you don't have any friends?
I don't have any friends. No,
That
actually,
we left you out.
Debbie Downer.
yeah. Why am I not hooked in it yet? Huh? You tell me, you guys. Huh?
you guys.
Well, remember we're on camera, so I have to pull back on the name calling here. No, yeah. I mean, I think it's not. It's just like I have a lot of friends that play it, and they all kind of have started playing, and they have their group, and it's just like I don't have.
This is sad. I'm sorry. You really felt like that, didn't you?
It's not sad. I don't know that I would have said yes if I had been.
You were too busy playing
I also
Destiny
think,
over there.
no, that's exactly it. You had Destiny coming out all but simultaneously, and we all know where Zach's attention's going to go. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was really because there were a handful of different groups, most notably one led by my brother Tim, one led by Ben Comstock that were like interested. Like Ben Comstock, he's a local and he plays this game religiously.
He's great. He posts all the time in the Arkham group on Facebook too. He's very helpful.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's helpful in general. So shout out to Ben for being an off-price community. Woo! But he's here every Wednesday, I think, with a different crew. He has 4 different groups.
Pillar of the community.
Yeah, he's playing like I think 4 different characters in each, and like it's crazy.
That's awesome.
He's
the expert.
I had wondered if the things that he was saying about like so and so is effective at X, Y, or Z, or this card is good or bad. Sometimes I'll be like, I don't know if Ben's right about that, but I'm pretty convinced if he's playing 4 different, like he probably knows a lot more than I do.
He's playing a lot, and I think that's I've actually talked to him and Tim about playing Carcosa once the cycle is closer to finishing, because that's the other part for me is like. I feel like when I do have the time to play something like this, it would be like your Saturday thing where it's like I want to just like
just a 12-hour
do this, the whole story. Because this and like the Wednesday cruise, they'll come play one session and then bounce, and it's like that's not how I watch True Detective. That's not how I watch Stranger Things.
Yeah,
it's definitely not how I'm going to play Arkham.
That's so funny.
That's what I was struck by the game early, but I think you're totally correct. Destiny came out like I guess a month after.
Yeah.
So it was.
Yeah, you already had 20 decks built by the time
it may as well be duck season. Yeah, that's right. I was just locked in. So
hey, we should pause for our own benefit. That we have the products we haven't even talked about.
They're right there.
We've got.
Yeah, go ahead.
We've got some crazy happenings actually that is incredibly just like it's overwhelming. It's very meaningful to us that we released the Mythos boards. This is a totally new product for us. Like we've always been dealing in acrylics and tokens, and we got the Mythos tokens out. Super happy with how those went, and we were playing Game of Arkham, and it was like, what? It seems like there's a better way to handle the way that the investigators are being framed up here. Essentially, you're having to put your tokens on this tiny card, which even our Mythos tokens, which were squared in order to like save as much space as possible. You're covering up everything that's meaningful, whether it's the stats or the art or the special abilities.
You gotta choose, and that's not fun.
So that's weird. And then you've also got clues that you're gathering during the game, and you've got resources you're gathering during the game. So finding a place, it drives me crazy to not know where something's supposed to go, right? That you should know that about me by now.
If your world
that book.
Coming, if you're right here, let's go back.
The art of tidying up,
if I have less things, then I have
life-changing
less
magic
to worry about.
New York Times bestseller, over 6 million copies sold. Put the affiliate link here. No,
it's a little novella.
If your worlds though, I would, and you see Steven playing, I would love for you just to look at his board state at any point.
Double tap, yeah.
Double tap. At any point, just check out his board state.
If you're playing with Steven, he's going to put a card from hand on there.
It's the truth. I can imagine Arkham just driving you crazy.
I like order.
It's like, was that resource token mine or like just the
That's
boards?
such a paradigm shift for you, because when I first was getting to know you, you were like this advocate of just pure chaos, spontaneity,
I was rebelling against my own nature, and I think that's important. I think that's good.
He was a communist.
I think that's good. I think that I was so attracted to Eastern philosophy because it was so different from my perspective on life. And when you're young, you are drawn to things that are challenging in that way, right? Like a new set of beliefs about, the world actually works like this. You've grown up thinking that it's this, but now it's this. You've grown up in this situation, but have you considered this? So when you're growing up in...
That must be exhausting.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I was going to say, do you think, and this is, we're rabbit trailing a rabbit trail, but do you think that's true of everyone?
I hope so. Don't you have the...
I know the question for this week.
Isn't the expectation that... there's the rebellious period of youth, And isn't that ultimately often rebelling against what you ultimately turn back to later on in life?
I think it can be, but I would also say that, just like you noting that it was, these ideas were non-conforming to what you had grown up with. I think that there are very much the, temperaments and, the nature and nurture kinds of things where it's unified and it fits with the personality, and perhaps they don't necessarily go through a rebellion phase, and it's just like, oh man, turns out X, Y, and Z were always for me, pardon the rhyme, and that's what I need, and I don't need to go looking for love in all the wrong places, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and even so, now I say that, even so, like my natural tendency, and this is a great question, is, are you to fight against your natural tendencies, and if so, who's doing the fighting? Those kinds of questions, right? So like, I think that I'm naturally drawn to being very ordered, very tidy, very like, feeling like I have everything under control. I like the control aspect of things. But I also like myself better as somebody who is going with the flow and, spontaneous and,
square man.
And unworried by, things being disheveled or not working out as you expected them to work out. So I think my attraction to that person is what led me to pursue that. And as you get older, like, you just kind of find, I think it's just a hard thing. You find the middle ground between, like, well,
the old balance.
Sometimes I do feel very ordered, and then sometimes I go to a Halloween party and I just want to be completely insane.
I think I really truly understand why you like Shannon so much now.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
At long last.
Yeah, she is.
I'm not going to segue there. Let's go back. Let's get back to the main course here.
Yeah.
So what you were talking about the boards?
I don't know. The boards, yeah. So the board was all messed up, and that was aggravating to me. I couldn't go with that flow, as it were, and just tossed it to Jonathan one day, like, hey, what do you think about like a board? Could we do a board? And so we did some in acrylic, and we looked at stuff, and then started talking, and eventually came around to this idea. These are resin casts with copper in them, because we wanted that metallic look to feel like it was in the universe, that antique copper look. It will actually like darken and age like natural copper will, and then started working with this prototype and this concept. And the first time we actually brought him over to Phillips to play the prototype. Yeah. And I was just so pleased that I had this perfect frame for my investigator, tracking health and sanity clearly. Like, it was that thing when you're playing a game and it just felt so nice to just interact with the pieces, right? Mm-hmm. There's that feeling of like, this is great. And so, yeah, it took off from there. Anyway, we launched these, and we didn't really know how much demand there would be for this kind of a product.
It's a whole new...
They work with our Mythos tokens pretty much exclusively, and we'd never done resin stuff before, and they sold out immediately. Like, immediately.
Which is
insane.
Which is so awesome. Like, a huge thank you to everybody. Arkham community, the whole thing. I mean, this is just kind of... I don't know, I can wax emotional on that all day, but anyway, they're gone, and we're making more, and so that was an incredible surprise this morning. And then we've got also some limited edition Carcosa style tokens.
To go with the old Carcosa?
Yeah, where we took our Doom tokens, and traditionally they're red paint fill with the moon phases on them, which is a pretty good generic indicator of like impending doom. And we replaced it with a yellow paint fill and the upside down torch. That was inspired by the original Chambers printing of King in Yellow, with the idea of the kind of undeath of something not being burned by a torch that's being held upside down. And in fact, Jonathan said the idea was trying to snuff a torch out that just won't go out. And that was the symbol of like Yellow King and Carcosa and that kind of a thing. So anyway, we do have these two new products, and we're working to get them back in stock, and we'll continue to do so for forever. So you can get those, and if you're as into order and things looking great, and they're beautifully designed. I mean, all the geometry
and two side dishes piping hot.
The symbolism. We also felt backed them. We got the felt back on there, so it's just really nice. We're just trying to make things awesome for Arkham, and I think we've done it. I mean, I'm super happy with that board. And
it's always the question of like, because obviously you buy the core set, you buy the game, and you have everything you need. You have the cardboard tokens. You make nicer versions of tokens. This is something people are going to want. And then the board is kind of a next level of like,
It's the whole system.
Just real going to see how awesome it can be.
You can grab the board and an investigator set and just bring it to your group, right? You don't have to buy all the rest of the tokens. And so that's really cool. And you just roll in with your high-class
Posh
board.
digs.
My organized board.
Yeah.
So we're always keeping our eyes out for that. And this is like one of the greatest examples of just, actually playing a game and then saying like, well, there seems like a very easy opportunity to make this way better. And so we took it, and I'm just thrilled that it worked out and that everybody seems to want this. And
I'm thrilled by the general response.
Yeah.
And just the positivity. And
it's just
really
awesome.
Cool
I mean, it means so much. So, anyway.
So speaking of making things awesome, we've had nice little segue there. We had the LCG shakeup of 2017 happen, which is all this crazy stuff happening. And we've mentioned a couple times in those conversations how, maybe the standard traditional LCG model of 1 pack a month, 6 packs, a box followed by 6 packs, makes a lot of sense for a game like Arkham because it is story driven. Each pack can function as like a chapter of a story. Each big box can start a new section of the book, and you can just kind of take it as you want, or even each cycle being kind of a short story.
Yeah.
So, do you think that the traditional LCG format is as good as it gets for Arkham, or is there a change in how that's being done that could potentially make it even better than it already is?
Well, I think the LCG format has always thrived on Lord of the Rings and Arkham. And I mean, you could change stuff, I guess, but it's the kind of situation where when you look at the competitive LCGs, you say something needs to change. And when you look at Arkham, you don't have that. It's not like, there's something wrong. It's like, this is incredible. There's no complaint. So it's not really a problem we're solving. Like, maybe you could create a new product type or do more deluxes or something like that, but there's just no need. I mean, I think it's perfect for Arkham. Like, tell a story, get new scenarios. Maybe separating out the player cards and the scenarios could be a thing. Maybe you could go to like seeker packs and those kinds of things so that you don't. But I don't know. I mean, like I said, I think when people think of Arkham, if you're an Arkham player, you're not thinking to yourself right now, I wish this release format was just different.
Sure.
Right? I mean, you might complain about, I wish this investigator was better balanced or, but aside from that, it's like, as compared to the other LCGs, you're just not thinking about the release schedule because it's great. I mean, it's awesome. And it's perfect for subscriptions too, as a side note, because there's no 6-pack, 6 weeks random splash of nonsense. There's no revising. It's just like, no, you're just continuing to buy the story.
Yeah.
So they just keep coming out. And so like subscriptions are great for Arkham.
Yeah.
Did you have any?
No,
thoughts on
I
that
agree.
as a Arkham. Yeah, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense to have that just continual story flowing out of a game like this. And I've really liked, they've done a number of the like print-on-demand scenarios, which are like the...
That's great.
If you're all about this game, if you really want a challenge, here's this unique thematic scenario that we can throw at you, kind of a situation. But then they also recently did the Novella.
Yeah, nobody was asking for that, were they?
Is interesting. I'm actually very excited to check that book out.
Yeah.
We don't have it yet, but I am excited to read it to
take a look at it.
see what that's like. But they also package with it exclusive cards for Arkham.
Put us in a real conundrum too.
That you can only get that you can only get if you buy the Novella. So that's new for an LCG.
That is new.
That's something they're doing, and obviously that's a marketing promotion. You have a non-competitive game. There's not going to be some competitive advantage from having this card packaged with a $15 book. So it's not that crazy, but like it is different. And there's definitely a lot of people that were like, I don't know why you're doing cards. I have to buy this book to get.
Yeah. I mean, the obvious start there is like, how many people would have bought the Novella, right? And then how many people are buying the Novella for the cards?
We'll never know now.
We'll never know.
I'm going to guess at 90%.
But yeah, I have to imagine.
That's what the internet was
from
kind of
everything that I've seen,
Yeah.
it's like, this is just basically a $15 alternate art Ginny for most people. So that seems a little suspect, right? Like, why even, like, if you're going to push sales to something, it better be a high margin, expensive product, right? Like a $15 Novella, like, it just seems like you could release those cards for $15 and it'd be just the same, like it'd be just as good.
Or it comes in the scenario that's also following Hot on the Heels, that kind of a thing.
That kind of thing. Or what if what if FFG is genuinely saying, we have an incredible story here. This is a great piece of work that nobody's going to appreciate because nobody's going to buy this, just thinking that it might be okay. And so they're saying, we stand behind this, we're proud of it. We want to make sure that people get a taste of it so that they understand how good the fiction actually is.
Sure.
That could be a thing. As a marketing geekazoid, I could conjure that up.
Consumer geekazoid.
I mean, I think that's you have a product that anyone that plays the game is at least somewhat interested in. Like, I bet most Arkham players wouldn't balk at the idea of this book. As far as
oh, I have to read this.
If they happen to receive that book for Christmas, they wouldn't be like, and just toss it, right? They'd probably at least check it out.
They take the cards out first.
Give me the cards, yeah, exactly.
They take the cards out first, for sure.
Ready to run Jenny.
I think kind of
Jenny from the block.
It certainly, to me, is an effective marketing promotion. There is a certain amount of almost gimmick to it.
I mean, it's effective in moving more novellas than you normally would, but why is that the objective, right?
Well, if the novellas are actually good.
If the novellas are good, or if they print them for $1 and sell them for $15, I guess that makes sense.
But the
I
other
don't
part
think
is
that's how printing works.
You've seen with Netrunner, they did the World of Android book, and it's I think part of it is wanting to provide a story and give people the ability to really get immersed in this thing. We've seen it they now have L5R. They also have Arkham, which are in Android, as worlds that they're kind of building and developing. And even with Netrunner, the revised core set, having the runners get older in the cards. Yeah. And I would love to continue seeing them press the envelope on telling a story through the art, through the cards, through the text, providing extra context for us to see this in. But I think kind of where the line on the novella that's more interesting to me is you didn't just do alt art. You did cards that you only get if you buy this.
Yeah,
this
correct. Alt functioning.
And so that's where
And you don't need them to play Jenny, right?
Certainly don't.
It's a different take.
She's very good.
It looks
with those
cool.
Yes.
And I mean, if you're going to do something that's interesting, you may as well make it actually interesting, right? You may as well not go halfway there, right?
Yeah.
If you're really trying to promote the novella purchase by enticing Arkham, the card game players, then give them something that is not what they already have access to, right?
My question is, are we going to see a deluxe box that comes with a novella?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what we're going to see.
Or frankly, the thing that we haven't seen yet, and I'm sure players would just bay for, is just a pack of player cards. It's not necessarily coming with a story or a scenario or, it's part of a campaign. It's just, hey, did you want a half dozen cards for each of, the 5 or whatnot different factions in the game? I'm sure 99.9% of people would be like, yes,
or even,
please.
Can you imagine an alternate version of every current investigator?
Oh, heck yeah.
Just like they did with Ginny, new signature cards for every investigator.
Yep.
You could fix Skids according to the internet, by the way. Worst investigator, who I've been playing from the start.
Skids needs fixing?
Is apparently the worst investigator.
That's what the internet would have you
Au
believe.
contraire.
We can't do it.
I think he's all right.
Tell me, give me your skin stuff. We're here.
You can't. Actions are the fundamental foundation of the game.
I agree, and what more do you need to say? In my opinion, it's just that he's dealing in clicks.
He's the third investigator.
Yes.
He's got to be.
Yeah, he's not a main.
He's not the first or second.
He's not a main.
But when
Correct.
you need, that's the thing is this is what happens in Arkham all of the time. I need to do one singular thing to make this not awful for us.
Yeah.
And it might be investigating, it might be fighting this thing, it might be evading this thing so that it's exhausted, it might be exploring this room, it might be getting the last clue, it doesn't matter what it is. But if you have somebody on the board who can go last and who can clean up whatever has been discovered during the turn and make it end as it needs to, first of all, that's great. And second of all, having 5 actions to 6 actions available to do that makes it way easier.
Huge.
Being fairly well-rounded in that, his permanent thing gives him investigating ability and evading ability. Having the access to weapons that can help you fight things, I'm telling you.
And even in my Daisy experience, even though she functions dramatically differently, the fact that one of her special ability is essentially a free click, which depending on which book you have,
Crazy good.
has a huge variety of potential and impact. But then she also has this Pathfinder card where, given certain conditions, she can move for free.
Yeah.
Move for free. I mean, that's something you want to do
That's crazy.
pretty much every turn. And if you can just do that without spending one of your relatively few numbers of clicks, that's a big
crazy.
deal. And once I started making some of those click efficiency adjustments in my deck, performance went
You
through
only
the
get
roof.
3.
You only get 3.
So as kids going from
Min-max.
3 to 4 is a massive improvement. Like,
Yeah,
that's crazy. It's
33%.
33%.
And then
We do
going
the
from
math.
getting
Carry the
Leo in
one.
there and going to 5 clicks and using the
So
some
you
of those
guys think
abilities.
Skids is great?
I mean,
I have never been disappointed with Skids.
I'm not going to stake my reputation on Skids being the greatest investigator that ever
No,
was.
he's not.
But he serves a very
Daisy.
specific kind of role, right? It's like if you're trying to be the best at something, Skids is never going to be that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're just trying to play cleanup as the third investigator and really make sure that your turns are ending with whatever has been revealed being taken care of, then I think he's great.
Mm-hmm.
You need as many actions as possible to do that. Oftentimes, the only limiting factor in this game is, do I have enough actions to do the thing that I want to do?
Mm-hmm.
I can pump extra cards. I can win a skill test.
Sure.
Like, everybody can win a
not
skill
an-
test.
it
They
shouldn't
have
be
to
an
win.
issue, yeah.
It shouldn't be an issue.
Most of the time.
But getting to the room that you need to do something in is oftentimes the most difficult part.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
I'm pro Skids.
All right, well, I'm
Pro
gonna,
Skids.
I'm gonna go off book here, and normally at the end of the show we ask a question, but we
So I
may
do
have
that
to,
time?
we may have no, it's not. We may have 2 questions. Question number 1 that I'd love to have you answer if you're listening or watching below in the comments is: does Skids O'Toole need fixing, or is he good?
Fixing.
And if either direction, why? Why or why not?
Everybody's very, very adamant about him being
except
poor.
you
But
two.
I haven't read the arguments. We're just having a good
We're not
time.
net
We're not net
decking.
decking. That's
Yeah.
right.
Here is the thing about Arkham, right? And it's both great and
I don't need
can
the
be not
internet to
great.
play Arkham.
That's right.
Which, internet or not, whatever. But with a lot of the games that we talk about, they are community-driven games. So there's tournaments, there's events, there's leagues. You go play, you go get new opponents and stuff. But with a game like Arkham, it does function a bit more like a board game in a sense that you can have your 2 or 3 people you play with, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys have this, like, your own understanding of what's good and what's not based on your
A
experiences.
little microcosm, yeah.
Yep.
And
And which is the way that's the most fun
Isn't
games.
It's like old
ultimately.
school. You're coming
Yeah.
up
it
to
is. You have your little crew.
to the place with your new deck that you just rebuilt, and it's just like, this is my brainchild
Yeah,
here, and we're
I've
going to see
created
how it
this.
works.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're talking like the lack of internet and
Yeah, just not seeing what's
It's original.
That's one of the things that makes it special is that, like, you do get to control and build your deck, but also not in the same way you do with a lot of these other games where
Yeah.
you're choosing all the cards up. Like, you are choosing them all, but, like, it's more restrictive.
Mm-hmm.
And some order and restriction creates rules that you can kind of do whatever you want in.
Yeah, it's a good world to play in for
So
sure.
if someone's listening right now, and this is how I'm going to conclude this part of the conversation, who hasn't tried out Arkham yet, what would you say, to them? Like, what kind of recommendation would you make? Because I think for me, it's like I'm looking forward. Specifically, I've had this set up where towards the end of the Carcosa cycle, I'm going to, thanks to some of my good friends who are knowledgeable about this topic, jump in and play through that cycle, so to speak. But like if they don't have a group or they don't, I don't know, where do you even start at this point?
Well, you need one other person. You don't need it. I mean, I think solo is a reasonable thing. Obviously, for us, tabletop games are so much about not being by yourself, even if that can be uncomfortable or awkward up front. That the fruits of putting yourself out there with the game as the conduit is ultimately well worth it and worth doing. But I would say find another person, and this can be pretty much. I mean, if your local stores are paying attention at all, they should have a Facebook page of some kind, and you can simply say, "Does anyone want to play Arkham?" You can walk into spaces that are game centric, whether it's at a college or at a local store, or even just at a coffee shop that you happen to know people are playing games at. Go see if anyone wants to play. And then once you have one other person, I mean, the rest, it's so easy.
It just kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah, I mean, you get the core set, and then you immediately have the game in front of you to play, and then decide, hey, do you want to keep doing this? Do you want to get some all by the first expansion? And
you
then
basically
share cards.
As far as I'm aware, so if you start with a core set, you can at this point kind of choose: do you want to go Dunwich or Carcosa?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it has to be sequential on either of those.
That's
Those are
correct.
2 cycles that are
Yeah.
out. So.
And then you decide, and I think, obviously, if you go from core set to the first part of Carcosa, you're going to understand that you're in an entirely new world, which is great.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Dunwich is more of the core set experience, continuing outward. So, your expectations are kind of set and you're following the story. But when you go right into Carcosa, it's
Whole new world.
As it should be. I mean, it should feel very bizarre and very different, and it does. So you just decide, and I mean, it's hard to get mad during a game of Arkham, really. I mean, I guess you could disagree with what the other person's trying to do.
Well, I really like, and this again, there's a lot of things that make Arkham, but I like the idea of playing your character, where you don't just do the optimal thing.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I
like,
took a drink because kids would take a drink when you're given the option at the bar.
Liquid courage, man.
Yeah. And it came back to haunt us a little bit, but it gave us an advantage.
But that's
in
life,
the
right?
moment. Yeah.
I mean, you are who you are.
Things will come back to haunt you once you start drinking.
We didn't finish up the novella thing. What is that a good thing to do? I mean, should they have done that?
I kind of left it open-ended there.
I don't know. I honestly don't know how I feel about it because I
Yeah.
wouldn't have bought the novella without
I would not have.
that. It looks great. I mean, honestly, the cover looks cool.
I don't think it is inherently wrong of them to do. I think they have promotional. I mean, I remember back in the day playing old Star Wars games, and they'd pack a promo card in the Star Wars magazine.
Yeah.
And I'd buy the magazine because I wanted the card, and then I'd check through the magazine. The magazine was fine. Yeah, it's cool. It was a thing. I read the articles and stuff. But I think that it's a perfectly normal marketing tool for someone to use. I would prefer it to be non-exclusive cards.
Yeah.
I like the alt art. Like, if each novella had 4 or 5 full bleed alt art cards that you only get in the novella, I think they sell more books. No one's upset, and
Well, and honestly, I mean, you can't really be upset about it, right? Like,
I don't think you can. Be
I mean,
upset.
it's a promotion.
That's kind of the
It's the same kind of thing where it's like if well, I was going to say Toys R Us as an example, but they're bankrupt now. You believe that?
Are they bankrupt?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
New world order.
Yeah,
Isn't that right? Yeah.
They're gone.
I mean, I think.
Too bad.
I mean, it's a promotion, right? Like if somebody said, if Apple says, hey, you get a free iPod whenever you do this thing, and you're like, I don't want to do that thing, but I want the iPod, and it's like, well, that's a promotion, right? You can't get mad about it, like.
Yeah, but I think the difference there, not to pick apart your analogy, is like.
Oh yeah, it was rock solid.
Yeah, I was up all night on this one.
I mean, you can always just buy the iPod.
Sure.
Yeah.
So like you actually you can buy the cards, you just have to buy the book with it.
Interesting. Maybe is that a line? I guess that is kind of a line.
But the truth
the
is
only means of access is through this.
Is to
channel.
buy
But
this
that
book, and
happens
I
all
think
the time,
that's what it's the difference. Which another thing that in particular Fantasy Flight did is in X-Wing they had the big Imperial ship come with upgrades that made the TIE Advance playable, and it was a $90 ship. And then the only way to get those upgrades is in the $90 ship.
Yeah,
It's true.
I think that is different because it's a $90 ship.
Yeah.
Right? And while it's a playable
So there's
thing,
a line somewhere.
there is a line where it's like,
All right.
ultimately, would I pay $15 for the 5 cards?
That's $3 a card.
Yeah, I would, actually.
It's the whole concept is pairing something you don't want with something you do want to force you to buy the thing you don't want. Great example. When I was a kid, I love Pokemon, of course, still do.
Bulbapew.
And Burger King had all of these promotions where you got your
Remember the
special
Pokeball with the
exclusive
gold
Pokeball
bars in
with
it?
stuff
I
in
do
it.
recall seeing those ads.
Now, did I want Burger King? Has anyone ever wanted Burger King?
Easy now.
Never.
I will
Easy now.
I will
He's the
say when they
king.
finally
He's the
came
king.
out,
It's the worst fast food on earth.
when they came out with those French toast sticks,
Those chicken.
young me was just like, "Whew, must have those.
Anyway, but I went and got the burger, and I didn't want it, and I didn't
no one's
feel robbed.
upset
did
at
I?
Burger King
Right.
for packing the Pokemon promotional thing.
Now, if they were selling a $90 burger, would we have been upset? I
there
think
gold
so,
leaf on it?
actually. I think we would have been.
What makes
mad.
it $99?
Well, and part of the difference here is that, as an example, you didn't see an exclusive. Maybe you did. I don't think. Did you see an exclusive Pokemon card that you could only get?
Probably.
Because
Certainly the Beanie Baby was exclusive.
They cut that out like super quick, right? I remember early on in these card games, it would be like, "Here's the thing you can only get from this promotion: a card."
Yeah.
And that was just bad. Like
Yeah.
there was Birthday Pikachu, and it was like you can only play this on your birthday, and then it's
Oh,
like
gosh.
you have,
Holy
you have
smokes.
9-year-olds at a tournament.
No.
And it's like prove that it's your birthday, and it's
No.
like I'm 9. Like how do I do that? Anyways,
Can I finish?
Library card, maybe? I don't know.
I think if the intent was to get eyes on a Novella line of products
They
that
did
would
it.
otherwise not have, okay, they've done it. Now, that would, to me, mean that the next Novella would have no exclusive products in it. Like, you're just trying to get people to understand there's a Novella out there and there's a series, and if you like it now, follow it. But we don't need to keep incentivizing you to buy something if you don't want it anymore, right? Like, that would be my take. If that's really what the marketing plan is, well, now you know.
But
or it could be a sales-based plan.
People have seen the product. Yeah, if it's that feels a little bit more.
But even then,
You're
it's
just
like,
forcing me to buy something I don't want.
It's like you go to Worlds, you get the alt art for showing up, and it's like here's an incentive to get you to do something you probably already would have done, and so that's where if you package alt art cards, full bleed even, because you have the capacity to make these, and it's a promotional thing. It's like we're going to promote the novella with these cool art. It's like this story is about this character, so we're going to provide 4 or 5 or 50 or whatever cards that look great, that are tied into the story, that are the whatever. They could do that with every book for the rest of time. But the moment you start having exclusive pieces to a game, but even then, I think the difference with Arkham is that there are no tournaments.
I don't know. Right? I know there's a lot of things swirling in old Duder's head here.
Duder's head. There's not. The only thing is there's a couple of cards that you don't get to use if you don't buy this book. And for a cooperative game, there's no one's winning a tournament because they have the card that you had to buy over here on the side from this weird thing. But I would prefer alt arts and full bleeds to exclusive content in the book. Even then, though, the book being $15 is like...
You got me.
All right, I'll buy the Happy Meal.
It's really no big deal, but still. There was plenty of angst, as far as I could tell, surrounding the bundling when it was first announced.
And, I think coming back to this...
It's similar. It's very similar to the Sakura token that we're doing with subscriptions.
With the L5
because the intent there was you can get more people aware of your subscriptions because we think it's a great service. And L5R players, having not been in the LCG space, it's like, well, here's something that is going to entice you to try it.
Yeah.
And then hopefully, and so at that point, it's like, okay, then you cut that off, and then you expect that people will stay subscribed because they figured out it was a great service. That's kind of what I'm looking at. It's like, now people know whether or not they like the novella, and they can either keep buying them or not. But to force them to keep buying them for the life of the novella seems a little bit awkward to me.
But if you, it's a good conversation. If you release the first novella, alt art cards featuring the character that's in the book, sales are great.
Yeah.
Then you put out the second book, no cards, sales are bad.
Nobody wants the novella then.
But do you go back?
Is that true, or is the reality of there's the hot thing to get, which is the rare thing that makes it tip people to buying it? Because of all the people that will buy the novella unquestionably because of the alt art cards, I am curious how many will buy it and enjoy having owned it. But then the thing that moved really got me to commit to buying this thing was the exclusive item that I'm going to get that also has use in game and further or whatever.
Yeah.
Because my curiousness, and this is where...
If they want the alt art cards, just give them the alt art cards, right?
That's fair.
If they don't want the novella, then it's not a product that the consumer wants, right?
Yeah, but buyer psychology, man. I get it. It's
$15, man. If you can't move a novella at $15, not enough people want to read
then why are you making a novella?
67-page story about it. Then stop doing it. Stop shooting it.
It was 125.
Was it 125
pages? Maybe.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But I think this is the trick, right?
How are they making any money?
Just from a macro level. I don't
well,
know
they said the same thing about the World of Netrunner book, and that this is something of a passion project. It's not a commercial concern or interest.
In the world, right?
Yeah. But I didn't have exclusive Netrunner cards in there.
But I do think maybe they should have.
But it was also a $50, $60 book.
That's true. Yeah.
So maybe there was a line they crossed. But so here's the trick, right? I actually think we'll see what they do. But if they put out exclusive cards featuring the investigator for the first couple. To get people in. And it's like, do you like these or not? Then they put out a book, and they just keep putting out books that are disconnected from the alternate cards or whatever. Then I think that's a really, it makes sense. It's like we want to get this in the people's hands.
No, it does. That does make sense.
Prove the value, and then once the value is proven, we'll incentivize you to do it early, just to show you that this is something you want to do.
A new product type, that people are not familiar with.
If you're asking why are they doing this, and you really go to the root of this, it's
I have some ideas.
Well, but you're even questioning. It's on a $15 book. How are they even?
Maybe they're not making cash.
Maybe they're not actually making money off of it. If the goal isn't make money off of the sale of the book, but get people into this universe, and really, it's give the cards, get them this book, plug them even further into this Arkham universe. Maybe it's working.
Yeah, maybe.
It's working.
And how many people are buying the novella having not played Arkham Horror the card game and are now exposed?
Good call.
I think it's a low amount of people, but I don't know that. I don't know that for sure because the Arkham Horror was their biggest board game. let's not forget, for the longest time when we first started getting into it. They have a bunch of Arkham-related properties.
Also, how many people are buying that book? Again,
they have a role-playing game
now getting
Arkham.
Well, they have Genesis, so maybe they'll do an Arkham.
That makes sense.
Little
Arkham
supplement to
RPG.
universe thing. All right, we're gonna move on. Any final thoughts on
Files,
Arkham and/or the novella from you two?
I think it's we didn't expect to have that discussion, but I'm kind of glad that we did.
On camera, no less.
It was a bit weird for us with managing subscriptions and figuring out how to do that, and so there's that. I don't know.
Based on that too. I mean, so we have a novella.
I want the
subscription
novella,
now, right?
Yeah, we do have the novella subscription,
and not even as a promotional piece here, but we have a novella subscription, and there does seem to be interest for the book.
Yeah. People are signing up for it. I mean,
straight up want the books.
But what happens if the next novella doesn't have cards in it?
We'll see.
Yeah, I
We'll
agree.
report it here first.
That's one of the things that I always kind of get looped around in is that you put out a product that the sum of its value can't be, separated or divided out. It's both a book and these 5 exclusive cards, and
What was
that I have to weigh both together at a $15 price. So that's difficult to then subsequently say, hey, you want that same price point with less stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, I don't know. I kind of really like the cards. If not, I like them more.
Going back to your Burger King example, right? Like, I assume the goal of those promotional pieces at McDonald's for Happy Meals, at Burger King's for the however we got those gold-plated Pokemon cards. Was sure we want to sell the Happy Meal right now, or the book right now.
Yeah.
But really, what they're after is if we have you come to McDonald's for Happy Meals for 20 years of your life, when you have kids, we want you coming back.
Yeah,
when
that worked.
Honestly, Burger King's problem is that by trying their food, you're less likely to go back.
Well,
like Robert Downey Jr. said, he was like hitting his nadir of life, and then he found himself like completely wasted in a Burger King, and he's like, this food is disgusting. I need to rethink my life. And then he started making Iron Man movies, and the rest is history.
Well, in that way, Burger King has done a lot for
That's
each
right.
and every one of us. So to you, Burger King, thank you.
MCU founded on Robert Downey Jr.
Jeez, that was a conversation. All right, we're going to get to a question. You can use the hashtag AskCovenant, and we'll answer your questions right here on the show. And
we got a lot of them, too, so we got a long list.
I don't know how many we're going to get to today. We went on and on about Burger King for some reason. But the first one is from Caleb Vance.
Pretty important.
He asked, do LCGs need to be a slow drip, or is that just the existing model? Like Steven said, they could release them by subtype or something thematic. I'd love to have a 7-pack cycle with 1 pack for each faction. I think that make packs a lot more attractive to new players.
Yeah,
Is
so
that
like L5R.
Caleb Vance of Vance Refrigeration.
I hope so. Tell Phyllis we say hi.
The answer is no, they don't need a slow drip. Well, they do need a slow drip of some kind. I think the LCG model really should be a slower release schedule with non-random stuff. Now, you could release just a non-random card game, right? What I think of when I think of an LCG is not just a non-random card game. Like, there's a number of those actually on the market already. Big expansions come out every now and again, and you buy them. But for an LCG, I think it's the idea that it's constantly evolving, slowly evolving. But the way that it's currently being done fits Arkham very well, I think. Story-driven, you have your 6-packs to develop the story that's introduced in the deluxe, and then you move on to the next one. Doing like faction-specific boxes doesn't make any sense to me. Doing like why 6-packs, right? Like why 6-packs? You have 7 clans, you have 7 entities in Netrunner. Why 6-packs? I think the data packs and dynasty packs and all this, being faction specific is a very good question in terms of sales, right? Because like if I release 7 packs at once, 1 for each faction, with maybe some neutral cards, and of course you can splash.
Caveat.
And then I have a deluxe box, and then I have 7 more packs for each 1 for each faction, and then a deluxe box. Deluxe box says theme, new mechanics, exciting story-driven things, and then how each clan or each faction is interacting with those things. That sounds really good to me, right? That sounds really fun.
It's great for a player, but it would be a nightmare for a producer or developer because, and especially when it comes to not only creating content, assets, cards and such for games that can accommodate those kinds of things. But then when you finally get to the marketplace, you're actually trying to sell those, and you have to meet the reality of just look at how It's not quite the same, but the disparity of how many players are playing which clans or which faction at a big event, and some years it's 60% one and 5% the other.
Yeah.
If you have products that I would imagine aren't necessarily made in uniform quantities, but there's something akin to that. It's like, oh man, we have a glut of crab, but we can't keep Phoenix in stock for the life of us.
Yeah.
That is its own new problem, and there's a lot of monetary risk in doing something like that. Of course, it makes complete sense for a player to want such a system.
Well, and I think that's you could think about that as, well, they're just using that to sell me cards I don't want, right? But I think the inverse is it's actually more of a practical, couldn't produce these. It's sort of, I think, the problem. We had Lucas on a while back for Destiny, and he was effectively saying that Destiny being collectible is the only way this game could have been made because of the manufacturing, just the process of that. So like with an LCG, is like, is it infeasible to produce product like that and distribute it like that and sell it like that if, let's say, 2 of the clans aren't popular and now those products do just sit? And it's like, we don't, there's a lot of problems there, but I do think
That's interesting, yeah.
on the flip side of that, as a new player walking in, you decide to play Phoenix, the idea that you could buy 3 or 4 packs and get a ton of Phoenix cards is actually very appealing. And that's where I come back around to the idea of, we've seen them do it, which is the print-on-demand World Champion decks. Right now, on our shelf, we have Netrunner and Thrones decks that you can walk in, $15, fully tournament legal. Well, it used to be tournament legal for Netrunner. fully tournament legal decks.
Fully banned.
Yeah.
But the reality of, technically, like with L5R, right, you get a certain point into the game, let's say 2 years, and you could put out a print-on-demand deck for
This
each
has
clan.
to be done.
And
Well, that's
then
what
it's
got me into
like,
Magic, are those print-on-demand decks.
I still don't get why we aren't seeing
Well,
those cards. It's like,
in the print-on-demand decks, would you include, it would just be alt arts of whatever's already in the
I mean,
packs?
the World Champions are just full, not even alt art, it's just full bleed of an entire deck. And so, like, with Thrones as an example, this year, you put out the Dothraki deck, and it's like full bleed of the Dothraki themed cards for this thing. You can, $15 get you literally into the league or the tournament that night. And you don't have to buy all these.
Man, but that'd be so hard for L5R because you've got the Dynasty deck and the so
it may be more expensive.
because if I come in as a Phoenix player and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get my core set and my Phoenix deck, then why would I buy any of the past releases?
But I think
which is great for the player. Again, that's what we're trying to avoid, is having to back catalog.
It has to be
the
like
whole thing.
symbiotic somehow.
I think the balance for me is if you had, and you'd have to really figure out how you want to do this, but if you had a deck that you could buy, I think that lowering the barrier of entry is ultimately very good. And then, asking the question, why do we release things in cycles? And so if the legality of cards is a little more fluid, as far as like, here's what's tournament legal, here's what's not, kind of a thing, then there becomes reasons to expand or buy, where it's like, when we put this print-on-demand Phoenix deck out, it's going to be legal for a year. But then it's like, at that point, a lot of those cards might rotate out. And so you can't just, you could maybe just live on the print-on-demand decks forever.
Yeah,
but
which is fine. It's really the point, right? Like, you should be able to at least have a reasonable
Some
experience
yes.
forever.
But here's the reality of these games, right? I know what happens when you get someone at L5R.
Yes,
like,
yes.
I don't want to just have one deck.
Okay.
Like, and that's sort of going back to the Novella thing. Either you're providing the value or not. So if it's not worth buying all these cards, why are we forcing people to buy all these cards to get in?
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to sell the guy that just or the person that just buys the print-on-demand Phoenix deck. If that's all they ever buy, they weren't ever going to buy the whole catalog
That's right.
anyway.
That's right.
And you don't want someone buying the whole catalog to be disappointed and not want to play the game.
Yeah.
So like,
Or think of it as a burden that's insurmountable. Yeah.
And for me, just a quick point from my take, it's not so much, of course, there are like, monetary burdens and those kinds of things, attention burdens with like L5R did, concentrating the release cycle. But for me, the biggest hurdle to jump over is when things are coming out that quickly, I have to go back to the drawing board now every week for 6 weeks and reassess what cards in, lay it all out, which for me is very intensive.
Yeah.
And everything's up for consideration again, and I don't necessarily have room every week for that, but eventually I'll catch
what
up.
I'm doing with L5R, I'm planning to do is basically just catching up after it's over.
Yeah.
It's like 6 packs come out, and it's like a deluxe box came out for me.
I wouldn't be able to resist. It's like, I gotta sort this out.
The new one, and we have to update these decks.
In the meantime, I'll just be playing Destiny. So, next
There you
question, and final question, from Monkey Boy.
I think Monkey Boy might be the...
Monkey boy. Oh, Lord.
Boy.
Ask Covenant, how do you find people to play with when you don't like your local game store?
Well, that's a great question. We'd love to solve that problem, ultimately.
Apparently, even your friends don't ask you to play.
No.
See you guys later.
Good riddance.
Don't ask Zach, you know what I'm saying?
That's what you do. Don't ask Zach.
How do you find people to play with?
I mean,
You got to get on some other community site. All these LCGs have their own like subreddit, their Facebook groups, yada yada yada. You got to engage, Google search where these people are
internet,
located.
right? You
Exactly.
have Facebook groups, you have Reddits, like you said. I think you also, another just fantastic place is the various events that are happening that aren't at a specific store, where it's like you have worlds, you have regionals. So, traveling through Forest to regionals. I'm trying to think of who it was. Oh yeah, MonCon. Going all the way back to MonCon, we hosted this small convention for a game from Monster Apocalypse, and I remember I walk in one room, I meet a few people from Chicago. A little bit later, other people walking from Chicago. My assumption was they came together. Right? Like this is a small game, right? It's a very niche game, and people from Chicago. It's like Shirley, like same city. They
all know each other.
Had never met. Like they met in Tulsa, Oklahoma, at MonCon for some unknown reason. So it is worth, like, if you don't have a local community that you're part of, reaching out, finding places to find people. Because if you're looking for people, I promise you there are other people in the same exact boat.
Yeah.
And this is exactly the problem, right? That's why the local game store needs to get its act together. Basically.
All right.
Facilitate.
Again, if you want to get your question answered here on the show, you can use the hashtag AskCovenant. We would love to answer that. And we always ask a question as we're leaving here. So I'd be curious to know. Leave it in the comments below. What was your Halloween costume? Until next time, keep playing.